All right, ready for another deep dive. This time, we're going deep into the world of sci-fi movies. But not just any old trip through the galaxy.
Oh.
We're looking at sci-fi through the eyes of, well, he wants to be a film critic, a guy named Francesco Defiore.
Interesting.
His story, I think, it gets at something really interesting. Like, how does being really passionate about something, in this case, sci-fi movies, how's that going to affect how he reviews them, if he becomes a critic?
Yeah, makes you wonder, is it even possible to be objective when you love something so much?
Yeah, exactly. So first, let's introduce Francesco a little. He's a communications major, totally obsessed with sci-fi. Ever since he saw Interstellar back in, when was that, 2016?
A modern classic.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the guy, he says, I love everything that has to do with space and the scientific aspect of what is being watched. Every film is different in its own way. They each have their own story to tell.
Huh.
Pretty articulate for, I'm assuming, a college student.
He is. And you know what else is interesting?
Go on.
He thinks that sci-fi as a genre, it requires more from you as a viewer than, say, a horror movie does.
More? In what sense?
He says it requires more critical thinking and even getting into some philosophical stuff. What do you think about that?
I mean, he's not wrong. Some of the best sci-fi films definitely make you grapple with big questions, like what does it mean to be human? What's our place in the universe?
Exactly. It's not all just pew-pew lasers and spaceships.
Right. Think about a movie like, 2001, A Space Odyssey. Mind-blowing visuals, sure.
Oh, yeah.
But it also forces you to think about, the nature of consciousness. Where did we come from? Where are we going? Heavy stuff.
Or even what was that one, Blade Runner?
Oh, yeah, classic.
That whole thing about, what does it even mean to be human? Are these replicants really so different from us?
That's what makes sci-fi so compelling, right? It takes these big abstract ideas and makes them visceral, makes them feel real.
I wonder if that's why it's considered one of the, top genres by critics.
Well, actually, there's this site, Loud and Clear Reviews. They're pretty well respected.
Yeah, I've heard of them.
Anyway, they say that sci-fi, it's the best of both worlds. You get the thrill of fiction, but it's grounded in, at least some kind of scientific ideas.
It makes you think, but it also, entertains you at the same time. So it's not just critics who love sci-fi.
What do you mean?
I was just looking at the box office numbers. Sci-fi movies, they consistently rake it in.
Oh, for sure. Especially these big franchises like Star Wars, Marvel, all that.
Yeah. The numbers don't lie. The numbers, that website, they have all this data, shows that sci-fi holds a 25.47% market share between 1995 and 2025. That's massive.
Huge chunk of the pie.
I mean, think about Star Wars. The Force Awakens, that one alone made over $2 billion globally.
Yeah, that was a phenomenon. And speaking of Star Wars, it turns out our budding critic, Francesco, he's a big fan.
Huge fan. Thinks space-themed sci-fi is the epitome of what the genre can do. He's got another good quote, actually. He says,
let me guess you wrote it down.
Always. He says, there is such a vast majority of films. This was when I realized I can watch any sci-fi movie and find joy in it.
I mean, I get it. There's something magical about space, right? The unknown, the possibilities, it just captures the imagination.
Totally. But even Francesco admits not every sci-fi movie is a masterpiece.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he says some can get a little too out there, the ideas are just too crazy, even for sci-fi. And sometimes the pacing is off.
Pacing.
Yeah, some are too slow, some are too fast. You know how it is.
I see what you mean. And that's something he'll have to be aware of if he wants to be a critic, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's not just about whether he enjoys a movie. It's about being able to, analyze it. Why does it work? Why doesn't it work?
Being able to separate your personal taste from your critical judgment.
Tough to do, especially when you're dealing with something you're really passionate about.
Especially with sci-fi fans.
Yeah.
They can be pretty, let's say, vocal.
Yeah, they don't hold back.
So it's on the one hand, being passionate about sci-fi could give him a deeper understanding of the genre.
Yeah.
But could it also make it harder for him to be objective?
That's the big question, isn't it?
It is. And it's something we're going to be exploring in the rest of this deep dive.
Exactly. We'll be looking at, the pros and cons of having all that passion when you're a critic and how aspiring critics like Francesco can find that balance, between loving something and being able to judge it fairly.
Should be interesting.
I think so. Buckle up. Yeah, it's a tightrope walk for sure. I mean, you got to celebrate the good stuff, but you also got to be honest about the, the not so good stuff.
And with a genre like sci-fi where the fans are so, how do I put this?
Passionate.
Yeah, passionate. It takes guts to go against the grain.
Oh, totally. One bad review of a classic, and you might as well kiss your career goodbye. So thinking about this whole passion thing, are there like critics out there who you think do a really good job of balancing, their personal taste with being objective?
Well, the first one that comes to mind, it's got to be Roger Ebert.
Yeah.
The guy, he loved movies, all kinds of movies.
Yeah, he was a legend.
But he was also like a really sharp critic. He wasn't afraid to point out flaws, even in movies that everybody else loved.
And he could explain it all so clearly, like even if you didn't agree with him, you could at least understand where he was coming from.
Exactly. He was a great communicator.
Yeah.
And that's what criticism should be, right? It's about helping people see things in a new way, not just, showing off how smart you are.
It makes me think about Francesco, He's still figuring it all out, how to turn his passion into like a critical voice.
It's a journey. I think we've all been there in a way.
What do you mean?
I mean, we've all had those moments where we like fall in love with something, a book, a movie, a band, whatever.
Yeah.
And we want to like understand it on a deeper level.
Yeah, you want to go beyond just, I like this or I don't like this. You want to know why.
Right. And that's where criticism comes in. It gives you the tools to, think about the things you love in a more critical way. To have those deeper conversations.
And maybe even appreciate them more, right? Like once you understand how something works, it can be even more enjoyable.
Absolutely. And this isn't just about movies. It's about anything you're passionate about.
So being a critic, it's kind of like a way of life.
In a way, yeah. It's about being curious, asking questions, looking at things from different angles. It's a skill you can use in any part of your life.
So for Francesco, starting out, what would you say is the most important thing for him to like keep in mind?
I think it's that curiosity, that willingness to keep learning and growing. He's going to need to constantly be like adapting, refining his voice.
Sounds like a lot of work.
It is. But Francesco seems up for the challenge. Remember that quote you had?
Oh, yeah, the one about being ready for the journey.
Yeah. There's a real sense of like determination there.
Yeah.
He knows it's not going to be easy, but he's going for it anyway.
That's inspiring.
It is. It reminds you that no matter what you're passionate about, it's going to take work. You got to be willing to, take risks, face challenges, believe in yourself.
So it's not just about being a critic. It's about like pursuing any dream, right?
Exactly. Taking that leap of faith, even when you don't know where you'll land. And in a way, isn't that what we all do when we try to learn something new? We're stepping into the unknown.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about Francesco, about being a critic.
We have.
But what about the rest of us, the people who, aren't going to be professional film critics? What can we like take away from all this? How does this apply to our lives?
I think the big takeaway is that it's important to develop a critical eye, no matter what you do, what you're interested in.
Like being able to tell the difference between like facts and opinions.
Yeah, and being able to like form your own opinions based on, evidence and logic, not just blindly following what everyone else says.
Especially these days, right? With so much information coming at us from all directions.
It's overwhelming. So yeah, we need to be able to filter it, to figure out what's true, what's not, what's important to us.
So basically being a critical thinker.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's not just useful for like your job or school. It helps you in your personal life too. Making better decisions, understanding other people's points of view, having more meaningful conversations.
You're saying we should all be like lifelong learners.
I think so. Always be curious, open to new ideas, willing to challenge your own beliefs. That's how we grow.
And it makes life a lot more interesting.
Right, definitely. The more you learn, the more you realize how much there is to discover. And that's pretty exciting.
It's like, the deeper you go, the more you realize there's like a whole ocean out there.
Yeah. And that's what makes it so much fun, right? That sense of discovery, never knowing what you might find.
Speaking of discoveries, I'm curious to see how Francesco's journey plays out.
Oh, yeah. Will he become like the next big sci-fi critic?
Who knows? But it'll be interesting to see, if his passion ends up being a help or a hindrance.
Right. Does loving something make you a better critic, or does it cloud your judgment?
Tough question. I guess we all have to figure that out for ourselves, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
We all have those things we're passionate about, things that, light us up, make us want to learn more.
Could be anything, really. Movies, books, music, even like collecting stamps, whatever gets you going.
As long as you're, engaged, excited, wanting to dig deeper.
That's what we've tried to do today, right? With this whole sci-fi thing.
Yeah. Using Francesco's story as a way to think about passion, objectivity, that whole balancing act.
We've talked about some pretty classic movies, debated the finer points of pacing, even gotten a little philosophical about, like, what is a critic's role anyway?
Big questions. But ultimately, this deep dive, it's really for you, the listener. It's about, getting you to think about your own passions, how they shape the way you see things.
So last question for you before we wrap things up. Imagine you could be a critic for whatever you're most passionate about.
Okay, I'm listening.
What do you think would be, like, the biggest challenges and the biggest rewards?
That's a good one. Really makes you think.
And that's what we're all about, right?
Taking those brain cells firing.
Exactly. So until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep that passion alive.